the chair of finance, I don't know. Vice president.
I think I contributed to confusing everybody. When I was re-looking at that for my distance here.
Okay.
I believe what that was saying was simply, let's just say me and Matt Walsh here are in Delta Sig. We can't both be on finance committee at the same time because we would lose quorum during a vote if Delta Sig came.
Correct.
So now I understand. So, I don't know if anybody else was in the same boat as me.
I understand. Senator Steve.
So what if there is so much of a conflict of interest that we don't have quorum in the finance committee? Then what would happen? Do we just, like, I don't know, what is the procedure after that?
I mean, I think presently when we don't have quorum, we can't initiate a meeting, so further, Judge was saying, would you like to add to that?
Could we possibly, like, could we possibly add more members to the finance committee?
Not, I mean, that would, Senate ratification.
If that happens, we'll let it back to the meetings. Or it never happened.
Well, I think what he's referring to is when there's members and there's a vote and there's a tie, then the finance and the assistant treasurer, so Dr. Jane would be the one making a decision on that vote and breaking the tie. Dr. Najjar.
This is something that we actually talked about, like what happens is, there's not going to be quorum on finance committee. And we're going to get to that. I think when we get to the president's rule, we did vote on that time also, but that issue was recognized.
Okay, I just wasn't sure what the procedure was.
Well, I can't exactly remember how exactly we would have, that's why I don't want to say and that could be wrong, but
Okay, so we just went through INL, so if there's any questions about the INL section, raise your hand. President Paul.
It says that the director of policies and procedures will have voting privileges in technical committee.
Yes.
So you took away their voting privileges from the Senate, and then
No, that was just because there's a uniform way of that we refer to the co-chairs, so we just said in committee their voting privileges are intact for all of them.
right, but directors don't have a vote on
In committee.
in committee. So unless they're a voting member of the Senate, which is probably why the director of policy and procedures had a vote in the Senate, was so that they could vote in INL. So you can either have the director of INL have a vote on both or neither.
Well, I guess that would based it off of finance as well, because Director Jean would technically have a vote just to break the tie,
He doesn't though.
but he does break ties.
All time.
No,
It's in their bylaws.
No, the vice president would break the tie on all committees.
Yeah, the VP.
The
It's included in
VP
the finance bylaws, though, that the assistant treasurer does break the tie.
So this would be giving the other director a vote on the committee.
Yes.
That's why it's specified.
Senator Steve.
Why wouldn't it be the VP instead? It's written in the bylaws that the director of finance would.
The director of finance, correct me if I'm wrong, that is how the bylaws
It
are.
is in the finance bylaws.
And Vice President Wilson breaks ties in the Senate.
But he oversees all committees, correct?
He does oversee all.
But he can be present at all the meetings.
As co-chair, he doesn't, like you said, he's not at all the meetings, he doesn't have to be.
Right.
As the person who is, who's supposed to know, who's given the responsibility to interpret this whenever it's needed, that's the person who just will be having the vote on that committee. They're already on the committee, just giving them a vote on the committee. We're not talking about breaking the tie.
Yeah. And then does Vice President Wilson even have a vote within all his committees? I don't.
No, he's oversees them.
So then, is that something that we should further discuss, President Tom, or is that something we just wanted to bring up?
I would look into it.
Okay. Just, I think that falls under just the Director of Policies and Procedures seat, or are we referring to every co-chair?
I mean, you want it to be uniform across the board, so look into both of them.
Okay. Director of Marketing would be the chair of the Public Relations Committee, and Director of Technology would be Public Relations co-chair, with both privileges intact. So that's just something we went through the Constitution and made sure that we're all aware of who the chair and co-chairs were, just for organizational sake. Again, comments if necessary. For staff, we said it was going to be chaired by SGA Secretary, and just because we didn't really know who fit the bill to be co-chair, I think, and I'm not sure, states already that, I think we did go through this point already, that the chair gets to choose who the co-chair is. And then diversity committee, the committee chair shall be appointed by the SGA president. That's also there. Public policy committee, we just said, because it hadn't been outlined already, and that was kind of what public policy was coming out of public policy was drafting resolutions. So he added that in, and he said the director of governmental relations shall also serve as chair for the public policy committee, although we didn't have one this year, but we just wanted to make sure that if there was a position, that's what their job description says. Or, and then because we removed home traditions early on when we were listing all the committee names, we added in SAR for fighting traditions as H, and that reads, shall review applications submitted for membership to the Senate on a monthly basis to promote a full Senate body. The dates for these interviews for SAR meetings will be set at a committee meeting at the beginning of the academic year. SAR shall be chaired by the Director of Policies and Procedures, and the Speaker of the Senate shall serve as co-chair without voting for the committee. What did you say that?
I don't know, I'm on the committee. I think because the Speaker of the Senate is in so many places that we didn't want to, like, you know,
Okay.
overturn their power.
I think it was just for info purposes.
For input purposes. Oh, as in
So
like,
still evidence, but,
At the same time, I'm wondering if that would be that type of, what they're thinking about, because I don't remember doing it, I'm not sure if they think we do,
or, yeah. So, I think we just wanted to make sure that I didn't have too much power and I was influencing who comes into the Senate. So I think if that was why that was, if that is the way we meant it to sound, that's probably why. But if I don't have voting privileges and you don't have voting privileges as chair, then that would mean that that Senator Patel, Senator Fink, and Senator Vijay would be the ones required to perform. So, I mean, I guess that also makes sense just because we would always be split 2-2. But that also means how many members are going to be in SAR in the future. So, I guess we'll go back to this. Any comments on that? No? Oh, and then there was a section 8, chairpersons of US Senate subcommittees may be switched by the unanimous consent of the executive board for ratification by the Senate. And I think in INL the conversation was this, we really don't see the point of that, and it just seemed like someone added this amendment just for the sake of it, just because it's probably pressing during that timeline for some certain reason, but we don't really see the point of why this would be. So the new section 8 is now below. The co-chair shall be a member of the committee that, if not assigned in the above descriptions, may be appointed by the chairperson of the SGA committee. So that's what we were talking about as far as staff goes, that if there is no co-chair assigned within the Constitution, the chair has the power to vote that co-chair in during the meeting. And then it goes into the job description of what a co-chair actually does. Section 9, the SGA president shall request preferences from all senators as to committee assignments and shall work to accommodate their individual requests whenever possible. Committee assignments shall be made during the second Senate meeting of the fall semester. For senators who are appointed and ratified after this meeting, SGA president shall also request preferences for committee assignments, though it is understood that the needs of SGA may override individual preferences at that point. And that was just a problem that we ran into at the beginning of the semester because staff couldn't meet. So we wanted to make sure the president had that power so they could make those necessary appointments. So that was what we were referring to earlier on in the discussion. No member of SGA may serve on both the finance and INL committees. I think, right. So in anticipation of appeals is what it said earlier. And I think in the past we've always just been confused, especially, and I think Secretary Gresham can probably add to that conversation. We've just never put finance committee members and INL committee members in both committees, and in the past they have been barred just because all of the time INL discussion deals with finance committee allocations. So So we just wanted to make sure that was just some problem that we just never ran into, so we outlined it specifically that that never happened. Any questions? And then this is the Board of Elections, section, no changes here, I think. Oh, there was, a misprint of what section they were referring to, so we fixed that. Budget fund.
Are we still on Article 6?
We are on Article, well, yeah, we just
We're
finished that.
not to bypass, because there's no changes done to these, so it's gonna be Article 8.
So where was Section 11
Section
in
11.
Article 6?
What do you mean, where is it? Well, I mean, section 11, we changed to section 10 because we removed the original section. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Article
There's, if you, now, are you looking at this copy, because she emailed out this copy for us.
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
8. Okay, Article 8, order of succession. So, Vice President from the membership of student government will serve out the remaining term of office. So the new president, if the president cannot serve, will be the vice president from student government. So we just made it all inclusive. Maybe there's a director that's more qualified at that point, or maybe maybe it's a senator, so we just wanted to make sure it was open to all members of the SG, not just the Senate. Section 3, if the SG president is unable to serve for any reason, the vice president refuses to accept the presidency, a special presidential election shall be conducted by the BOE within 30 days. If the events described in the section occur during the summer term, the vice president shall act as president until the election can be scheduled within 60 days following the start of fall term. The new president shall assume office immediately upon receiving notice of his or her election. I think we just moved this section out, is what we did, rather than add it in. Yeah, so it was originally section 7, we just moved it up. And then it does highlight summer term, but we're just assuming that's just, if it happens over the summer before they take office in the fall, that's how it is. We are not active during the summer, so I just want to clarify that as well. Section 4. In the event that both the president and the vice president are unable to serve, I think this is just another section we moved up. And it is in section 8, so I won't read that. Section 4 may be waived, and then I think the only amendment is that we changed in section probably 8 to what it was to section 4, what it stands as now. We removed that a seated senator is not able or willing to take office as secretary. The president shall advertise for the position of secretary in the Phoenix media for a period of 2 to 4 weeks. The president shall then recommend the qualified applicant to the secretary who will serve out the remaining term of office. This appointment shall require an affirmative vote of 2/3 of all votes of members present. So yeah, it's not really pertaining to this. Yeah, so it was just, we removed that if the senator is not able to, we removed the process of advertising, or exactly how advertising would work. Director Major, do you remember, or any INL committee member, do you remember if that was just because you didn't want to go outside SG, or if it was because we just didn't like the entire advertising process? This is section 6.
You know, who's doing it.
Yeah, why did you?
I think that was because it was already said, that, because that advertising for 2 to 4 weeks, that was already said before.
In section 6?
Maybe I was just-
Section 8 below says the exact same.
We should just figure out because
We just, yeah, we removed it and made it its own section. You don't look like we're just trying to keep an SG. If the SG treasurer, okay, and then we changed the section titles and we made a new section that was deleted. sections that we already moved up. And then the new section's title is 10 now. Removal from office and or membership may occur by 2/3 votes of the voting Senate members. We thought it was unnecessary and redundant to have present, because why would anyone that's not present in the Senate want to do so? All members under investigation, just clarification.
So there's a difference, it's not exactly redundant, it's two separate things entirely. The 2/3 vote of the total membership means everyone is there, right? The 2/3 vote means who's present. So if you remove that, you're changing it, which you can do. I'm just letting you know that it's not redundant.
Oh, I think, yeah, now I remember, I think I just read it too fast. I think the conversation in INL was quorum, so we were just referring to whether any SG business would have passed within Senate, and I don't think that's ever happened before, because if we don't have quorum, then we can't do meeting. So that was why we removed present. In the form of a formal recommendation to the Senate, so just clarifying the process that does take place with INL. A specified meeting of the membership or the INL recommendation is presented. Again, just a clarification to make sure that we're being specific in the INL process. The only amendment, I think, to section 9 is Article 9, or 10, Article 10, section 8. Senators shall attend all SG Senate meetings. As a courtesy, anticipated absences should be communicated to the Speaker of the Senate at least 48 hours prior to the scheduled meeting time, barring emergencies. So I think that was just for my own benefit, because a lot of time I do hear about absences really late, but obviously that's just courtesy, it's not a requirement. It was just, you know, to remain professional, I would like at least 40 hours. And then to move this under attendance policy, we just added attendance is taken to, let me make sure I'm right. Yeah, so this is under meetings, that's why we added this article under section 9. But although I think it could be better.
So, what?
Attendance is taken via roll call. Oh, well, attendance policy, so that makes sense. So attendance is taken via roll call.
Yeah, the reason why we did that is just because like, that's how we do it, but, I mean, just so it's just stated. So it's there for future reference, so everyone.
Okay, absences shall not exceed 1 per academic term, unless otherwise provided for. This document, any number exceeding 1 is considered unexcused without the consent of the speaker. Then we removed section B. Okay, and this was just a clarification, I think, about what can or should be considered excused within authorized university activities. I think this is just something they removed in the past as well. But we just felt, original supporting documentation, it was just, the process was very specific as to what is or isn't excusable. So we just made it, I guess, a bit simpler in that regard, stating that a senator in violation can present their case to the Senate for the Senate to decide whether or not it is excusable or not.
This is also just saying that, like, you know, if there's an emergency or something, that, like, if this is saying it's, like, unexcused, so if there was an emergency, obviously that you could really excuse, so it's kind of just like saying, well, there was a situation like that, then, like, they don't have to necessarily appeal that. It's up to, again, it's up to, you just have a person who decides that.
Senator Walsh?
I really think we should consider proposing like the attendance policy across the board throughout our organization. Because, I don't know, I've seen many times like directors come and go and not even show up to like one meeting, and they would still get their scholarship award and sometimes not do anything and still get their scholarship award. And they're supposed to know like what's going on in our meetings so they could direct our organization to the path of their description. So I feel like directors and cabinet members, e-board members, they should all be accountable to the same reason. And if for some reason you miss more than one meeting, then you just go before the Senate, tell them the reason, and then you deem it excusable or not.
I Okay, so you're proposing that the directors and board
Yeah,
also.
and I understand there's no, you're not a voting member, so it shouldn't really apply, but if you're in a high power of this organization, you shouldn't really miss any meeting.
I understand. Also, I saw Director Stevens and then Secretary Gresham and Senator Kojal.
I also agree with that, but the place that we would change that would be in
Upstairs.
position description, because nowhere, at least in my position description, does it say I even have to be here right now.
Yeah, it is a fine detail, so I'm not sure where exactly it could fit if we do propose a change. Secretary Gresham.
The reason why, like, they're not required is because we have our e-board meeting every week, so it counts as our meeting, and then we all come anyways. And then for directors, they're supposed to be meeting every other week, and that's supposed to be like their meeting. Yeah, so that's why they don't have that attendance policy, but I understand where you're coming from, but that's why it's been set in place. If it's done right, then it makes sense why you don't have to.
Agreed. Senator Kojal.
I would love to add my voice to Senator Walsh. At least maybe, if not one, at least maybe they are allowed to be absent maybe 2 to 3 times in a semester, but not showing up at all. And what they're getting from scholarship, I think it's very valuable. They have to value the place that they're sitting with. They're sitting with, they're taking responsibility as well.
Okay, Vice President Wilson.
Just another thing to add, I think, I see some good points here, but also for the executive board, it is a separate branch of government. So I don't know how that would work if the executive board were to, members of the executive board were to miss, let's say, a certain number of meetings. They can't really come in front of the Senate because they're a separate branch of government. It would be like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It would take away the checks and balances of the system.
I agree, and in that sense, I guess we can also look at it as like, do senators have to appear in front of the cabinet meetings? Do senators have to appear at an e-board meeting? It's not required, but it's open to all, right? Correct?
Right.
So, in that sense, I can see why it doesn't have to take into consideration, but I definitely think that in that sense, we should probably hold an attendance policy for those meetings as well, for their own benefit. Senator Walsh?
Well, they're also getting paid more to be able to allocate their time more effectively
Right.
to, let's say, if they had to work less, then they should be able to show up to the meetings. If they take a job with that responsibility, you should have the amount of time to fulfill your duties.
Right, I think an attendance policy across the board is very efficient, so I think that I know can look into that. Dr. Najarian, just make a.
Yeah, our, like, very much so, our presence of our e-board very important to us. But like just like how I said, like it wouldn't necessarily be this, we couldn't easily just say, like, the e-board and Senate has to be here and then hold them to the same process as if they were at this meeting, because, you know, like the e-board doesn't go in front of the Senate, that's not how the powers work. So yeah, I know how to kind of draft a potential, like what would happen if they did miss a meeting, or how many go out of this, because we have, like, for example, President, you know, they have to go down, they have to do trips a lot, so they end up missing a lot. Secretary, they take meeting minutes, so they're here anyway. So yeah, we'd have to kind of just tailor it and then make sure it's not overboard or balanced, balanced in a reasonable conclusion.
Okay, Senator Bernard.
If it wasn't going to be decided by the Senate, it should be decided by the judicial board.
Well, here, okay. So I know we'll discuss that and continue on. So yeah, we removed the definition of authorized university activity, as we already said that the appeals would be handled within the Senate. We're not active during the summer, so we removed written requests for summer term absences. And then just another clarification, rather than 15 minutes after the intended start of the Senate meeting, we said the policy would go into effect at the beginning of the Senate meeting when it's called to order, just because sometimes we start at 3:30, sometimes we start at 3:35. So just when it's called to order. And then we removed a section about class obligations and just specifics about 30-minute grace periods. Usually when people do have conflicting class schedules, they do ask me, or they do let me hold and know in advance, so we are aware of that. So I don't think that's something we needed within our Constitution. Again, if this is a concern, please raise your concern. Violations of the attendance policy. Senators who are receive written memo email. So we removed that just because we felt it was, although it was efficient, it wasn't exactly something that we felt was necessary just because our policy states one absence during a semester, and we do have attendance checks by Secretary Gresh. So the process that occurs so far is just that Secretary Gresh lets me know, or someone lets me know if they violated more than one absence in the meeting. So then it goes into the process of what happens if you miss a second meeting. Are you saying like what I
Like, I mean, like, just like seeing it, like.
Oh, I see. Is that it?
That's not reasonable, I see.
You can look at it in
Okay, moving on, the order of business for all Senate meetings shall include the following: A, call to order; B, attendance check; and form check. And the rest is the same. The order of new business shall, and then we have to refer to new business here, so we added new. In case of appeal, removal, or instances that relate to old business, these agenda items shall be addressed above all new business reports. Just added in the numeral 5. The funding process, no changes. And then the ratification of the new SG Constitution must follow the same steps as detailed in section 1 above. The Constitution must then be submitted for a vote of approval to the CUC student body within 30 calendar days following French approval. After student approval, the Constitution shall be submitted to the public student officials for more motions. Okay, I'm not sure why we added that in, or if that was, oh wait, yeah, we just moved that. The Board of Elections shall conduct elections for the purpose of ratifying the new SG Constitution. Right, so obviously we have our one Constitution, we're not proposing an entirely new one. And then we just changed the title of Article 14 to advisor rather than faculty advisor, because the advisor Johnson covers all of these sections, and that is what the job description as well, rather than just the faculty advisor. And then we better outlines, I guess, what office hours are defined as time spent during the business day toward SGE related tasks and responsibilities. Appeals of decisions, just removed, the entire new final rather than have it done. And then the Speaker of the Senate was bolded here, so we need it unbolded. And the parties in question were not, okay. Section 6, let me just read that. Of the INL committee shall notify all parties by certified email with written receipts of the outcome of an appeal within 5 business days following the Senate's final decision. If the parties in question were not present during the decision process, I just figured, as I now figured that if someone does have to go through the appeal process, that they would know the final outcome if they were present. So if they weren't present, I would send out an email. And that is the rest of the costume. Okay, so we, as a committee, will go back and look at all the highlighted terms, but I do think it's necessary that we just motion or discuss or object the proposed constitution as it is, and then we'll come back and visit the highlighted terms later. Does that make sense? I'll just table it entirely and bring it back with the operations meeting. Okay, so will someone make a motion just to table?
Table the SGA Constitution discussion.
For the April 21st. Do I hear your second? Senator Cohen.
I second.
Any discussion on the matter? Objection? Hearing none, motion passes. Lastly, I just want to remind everyone that African Night is tonight. It's an event that we have helped fund. So if you are available, please make yourselves available and attend. There is a Women's Leadership Symposium next Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, April 12th. It is, for the first time, I think it's going to be at the Intercontinental Hotel rather than Wolstein Center, because the entire event is just so big. And I think a couple familiar faces will also be there, as panelists, so you can guys should definitely attend if you're interested. Let me know that note because, all the registration is closed. They are accepting other SG students, or not SG students, UC students to be present. So let me know if you're interested in that, just come up to me after. It is Wednesday, April 12th from 8 to 4:30. That's the announcement. And then also just a reminder for that Senator recap, next week, Friday, April 14th, for SG meeting times, let me know if you can't attend. I didn't get the template out, and that was just because of that, and I couldn't discuss the template so far, so we just wanted to make sure we're on the same page before we made it obligatory now with you. So any other questions? Okay, I know the constitution process is very long and tedious, so thank you for staying awake and for asking some really good questions, I really appreciate it. Other than that, I adjourn this meeting